What's up, Jets fans, and welcome to an interesting Ep.7 of JetNation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Tereman and Glenn Naughton. I thought we were going to lead the show off talking about this Jets 3-game win streak, and we will get into that. But unfortunately, that's not the case. As per NFL insider Ian Rappaport a couple minutes ago, within the last hour, star wide receiver for the Jets, Elijah Moore, has requested a trade. Obviously, this comes due to his usage and his frustration with that usage, and he believes it's not enough. I'll just kick it right off to you, Glenn. How we doing, and what was this like right before we went live to get this news?
Well, hey, listen, it's better to get it now than to get it 2 minutes after we go off the air, right? So
For sure.
there's the silver lining. But listen, first things first, credit to Rich Cimini. As I said to you, Dylan,
Yes.
just a second ago, I did tweet you whenever Cimini tweeted out that Elijah Moore was in the practice today, and I saw a lot of Jets fans who were like, "Oh, Cimini, he's stirring the pot. He's always got to be negative." And my thought was, this is at least noteworthy. And I messaged you and I said, well, the timing is kind of funny. And what I meant by that is, how often do you see a guy in his young 20s, a second-year player, who, despite his lack of targets, is a big part of this offense, get a day off a couple days before kickoff? Like, days off today are reserved for like 37-year-old veterans who have so much wear and tear that it's a courtesy to them. Teams don't just give 22-year-old stars the day off a couple days before the game. So at least I thought it was worth mentioning I read it from Cimini and I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And then I see all the replies. "Oh, to hell, Rich, you're an idiot, Rich. Why are you saying this, Rich?" And I'm like, what am I seeing here that other people aren't? This is noteworthy. Mm-hmm. Now we find out Elijah Moore wants a trade. This is a terrible look for Elijah Moore. It's terrible. I mean, I kind of defended the tweets, the post-game tweets. I said, look, he's frustrated that he's not getting targets. I get it. He'll come around. Like, I didn't think that much of it. But this now, like, you're requesting a trade? I don't know how many people out there listen to the Coach JB podcast, Jason Brown from Last Chance U. He talks about this all the time, how dudes are soft, and when they don't get their way for 10 minutes, they want out. College guys want the transfer portal. NFL guys want to get traded. They want to get cut because they have, a bad few weeks. Dude, as a fan of this team, I've watched good players, play an entire career, winning 4 or 5 games every year, not always getting the playing time, and they suck it up. And listen, I get it. Like, times have changed, and now guys are, more willing to take charge and kind of set the direction for their own career, which I really can't knock. But after a few games, like 4 or 5 games of you're not getting enough targets and you want to be traded, you don't think there's a chance that wherever you go, there might be a short stretch where you're not the center of the universe? It's such a bad look for him. The Jets, of course, saying they don't want to deal him, but what happens moving forward? I didn't realize this, as I just said to you, Dylan. I was only half joking. I thought, what if Denzel Mims is active this week? Now we see Elijah Moore inactive, and you just said to me that Brian Costello from the New York Post tweeted just that. So what do you think, Dylan? What was your reaction, and what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, my initial reaction was, one, my heart sank because it's well documented on this podcast. We are fans of Elijah Moore. Like, what he can do when the ball is in his hands is truly special. Other than that, I think it is selfish. Obviously, this team is on a 3-game win streak. I don't remember the last time anybody on this team has been part of a 3-game win streak. And like you said, regarding the injury report or the day off, if this was somebody like Dwayne Brown, sure, I wouldn't sneeze or like look at it twice. I'd be like, okay, whatever. He's 37. His shoulder's been hurting. It's a year-long thing, but he hasn't been hurt once this year. Yeah, he's used a lot, and he's kind of running around and doing not much of anything. But schematically, I feel like he's taking 2 bodies away from the play because they're bracketing him in coverage. That's just my schematic point of it with him. But it's a terrible look. Like, you can't do this when your team is this young, finally getting its feet underneath him. You are still a part. I get it. You're not getting the ball himself. And Albert Breer tweeted this out, and I didn't have all the numbers right, but he did. Elijah Moore's first in receiving snaps for the Jets, 82%. He has had at least 4 targets in every game before the Packers game. And he is 6th in receptions, 5th in yards, and 4th in targets. So this kind of mirrors what his path was last year. He was the 3rd most targeted and had the 3rd most routes run, but he was the 1st in yards and touchdowns. But this isn't the case this year. He's just not getting the ball. So he's technically out there on the field. They're just not getting him the ball. And we talked about it offline. When Zach Wilson's throwing 18 passes a game, I'm sorry, like your one target was a shit target. I'll give it that. And it was a penalty. That was a fluky penalty, and we'll get into it. But it's just, you can't do this when your team finally gets their act together and reels off some dominant wins. That's what we want to talk about. We don't want to talk about this garbage. And unfortunately, I've gotten to the point that if it comes to a trade, I've accepted it. And this might be a reason why I don't buy Jets jerseys anymore.
Yeah, the Jets have supposedly said they have no interest in trading him.
Of course.
But like I said, what happens moving forward, you know, and does a team call up and listen, super talented player, but you used a 2 on him. If someone calls you and offers you a low 1, I mean, obviously you don't know where teams are going to be picking nowadays, but you know, hypothetically, let's say, well, the Bears aren't giving you a 1 because they're probably picking top 3. But I mean, they could give you. I don't know. I don't even want to get into the bottom line is the Jets are saying they're not interested. But listen, everyone's interested in a trade. If
every team should be interested in trading for him.
Yeah. And there are teams out there who could definitely use him. I just can't believe this, man. I mean,
I know. Has there ever been a scenario where after 3-game winning streak, somebody has requested a trade? I understand people get frustrated and somebody tweeted it out, and I forget who.
Bad few games.
Exactly. If we were 1-5, and this is what the tweet said, it'd be understandable. It'd be okay. Like, I get it. You're frustrated, but like, we're winning now. Like, and I get it. You tweeted out after the game, you're happy for your teammates and you want to be there. But like, what does that mean 3 days later when you're now requesting a trade? Are you actually there for your teammates? Like, I don't know. It's tough when they want to run the ball. He's not their best run blocking wide receiver. He's a great route runner. I don't think they're throwing him the best routes. We could get into Mike LaFleur's role in this whole thing, and I think he needs to manufacture way more touches for him. I tweeted, if you have Braxton Berrios running around the yard, I get it. He's a return man. But Elijah Moore and him are of the same mold. You can get Elijah Moore doing pretty much the same things Braxton Berrios is doing. I think it's just a matter of they're doing it with Braxton Berrios instead. So I don't know if they get rid of him, I'm not going to say it's going to be the same offense like a lot of people think it will be, because it's not. I definitely think he's getting bracket coverage. The corner, the safety's edging on his side. And in Miami specifically, they run a lot of man. They were running single high with the safety, on his side. And there's just him isolated on the side of the field. It's just him, the corner, and the safety. That's not a good look. You're never going to throw there. Numbers game says you're not doing it. So Zach just cuts that whole field out, half of the field out of his progression. And it's unfortunate, but it's on everybody to get him involved, and you shouldn't do this after a 3-game win streak, no matter what.
I mean, that's the worst part of it. I mean, there's 2 things that are equally bad, and I know I've already said it, but it's the fact that you're winning, and it's the fact that this is a few games. Like, deal with some adversity as a football player. You know what I mean? There are going to be times in your career when things aren't going.
Last year,
you're going to ask to get traded like every few weeks when things aren't going your way. Yep. It's really surprising. Especially he just seemed like such a, I don't know. I mean, it's not, is it a character thing? I don't know. It is kind of a selfish, like, I mean, he says himself, I don't want to be that guy, but he's being that guy, Yeah. It's like sending out a tweet saying, I'm not going to say anything. Well, the tweet is saying something.
You're already saying something. Yep.
I would like to announce that I do not have an announcement. Like,
exactly.
What are you talking about? You just said something about the thing you're telling us. You're saying something to not say anything about. So he does that, and then, I'm happy for my teammates. I love being here. And then a few days later, he wants to trade. I messaged somebody and said, listen, sometimes you do see guys pipe up in situations like this, and as they say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So my thought was, I'm going to put some money on Elijah Moore this week to go over his yards, his projected yards. Yep. Because I think the Jets are going to say, all right, let's keep him happy. Let's get him 6-7 balls his way. But now I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think that's the way forward, really. Yeah. Get him some catches, win the game. But the problem is, you're not facing a defense where you're just going to be able to drop back and put the ball where you want. Like, this is a good defense. So I could see Yeah, we'll get into that later, but yeah, it's such a bad look for him.
Yeah, exactly. And just to put a bow on it, his range of outcomes this Sunday are truly wearing street clothes on the sidelines or like you said, possibly multiple double-digit targets and
140 yards and 3
end
touchdowns.
zone looks and the whole nine. Exactly. So anything can happen. I think it's rightful that fans are frustrated. They have every right to be. We're finally
Absolutely.
This is a stupid distraction that did not need to come down on a Thursday when we're game planning for a game that we're going to get into that is winnable. Again, another winnable game, excuse me. So just not a good look. We'll get into it a little bit more later, but for now, that is just we're on monitor. We got to watch it, and hopefully he doesn't get traded and the latter of the opportunities happens and he absolutely poops against Denver. But we have to get into what happened last week. Obviously, the Jets got their second dominant win of the season over the Green Bay Packers. This is the third win in a row, excuse me. And this win, combined with the Miami win, now has 40 points over their opponent. So they've won by 40 points in the last two games, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And it shows on the field. They're more physical. They're way more aggressive on between the whistles. Their halftime adjustments were way better. I think somebody tweeted out a Salah halftime speech about we can't, if we just pull them deeper, they can't swim or something like that. I'm not sure if that's confirmed, but if that is the case, that was absolutely true in the second half. They pulled them deeper using the run game and they could not hang with the Jets in the second half. We were getting push on offense and defensive line, which how you win games in the trenches. Quinnen Williams, man, another great game for Q. So all in all, what were your thoughts on the win before we break into the goods and the bads of it?
Well, that what you said, and we talk about it all the time, and it's I said to you a couple of times as leading up to the season, that I was trying really hard to temper my expectations because every year you kind of think like, okay, if this team plays to its potential, what's the best case scenario?
Mm-hmm.
And in recent years, as well, if everything goes right, you might win 6 games, maybe you win 7, and you win 4. But this year, it's because of these trenches and because of the corners that I didn't want to let, like, I think I said that the most you'll see, the ceiling on this team's wins, I think I said was 9. But I really was kind of thinking to myself like, again, they're all ifs until we know.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kept thinking, if these corners are as good as advertised in a passing league,
yep,
and you win in the trenches, because again, this is when we thought Becton would be back, but now really Dwayne Brown is no slouch. 37 years old or not, he is a grown man and he is abusing people. So really, even without Becton in there, you haven't lost much, if anything, really. But I just kept thinking with Tomlinson, with Becton healthy, if he had been, I'm like, I can't think of a lot of teams that'll be better than them when the Jets are on offense in the trenches, and then the same along the D line. If Quinnen takes that next step, which he clearly has, if Lawson stays healthy, which knock on wood he has so far, that was my whole thought. I'm like, offensively and defensively, more times than not, they're gonna be the better team in the trenches, and you have these two corners, which were sort of the biggest question marks because of the boom or bust factor. Like they to me were the guys that were going to make it a team that can make the playoffs versus a team that wouldn't have a chance at the playoffs. And I was like, if those guys can lock down the way that we believe they can, and you win in the trenches on Sundays, if you remove the emotion from it, like let's say we were talking about another team, right? Team, pick any random team. Let's say you haven't been paying attention to the league for a couple of years, and someone comes to you and says, well, there's a team right now. Every Sunday or almost every Sunday, they're going to be the better team in the up front. D line and O line is going to be a superior unit, and they have a couple of shutdown corners, and a guy like Breece Hall to boot. You would think, okay, well that to me sounds like a 10 or 12 win team, right? Like you're the better team up front every week, and you have shutdown corners. That should be a 10-12. But I can't allow myself to think that. Like I don't want to get that far out of myself. So I'm still thinking, all right, 9 is the cap, but really part of me is like, it's a little higher than that, but.
Yeah, I think expectations, especially from the Vegas win total of 5.5, definitely need to be adjusted at this point. I think
Yeah.
when Alex and I did it way back when the schedule was first released, and I didn't really, change my outlook too much. I had it at 7-10, and I think that was a low end, like you're just saying, for all those reasons. Like, you don't want to be overly optimistic. And I
Yeah,
said
I
7.
was saying 9 was the ceiling, so I was probably saying 7 and 10, 8 and 9.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure if you go back and listen to that episode again, I'd probably say 9 is the ceiling if the ball bounces in the way that it looks like it has been for the Jets recently. So my two things were, if you're going to go on the road, and Lambeau is always a hard place to be. They were, I think, 15-0 coming off a loss, or 10-0 off a loss. Yeah.
I think it's like 15 wins
I think it's
outright,
Rodgers is 15
and like
and LaFleur
12
is
and
10.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
A lot of wins and no losses.
Literally what we're saying. No losses at home, and the Jets packed a run game and a defense. That is the key to success in any situation. You couple that with offense and defensive line domination. It's like not even we talked about it, that graphic last week, and it was PFF Sam who put it out. And he said elite front four. The Jets and the Bills were kind of in their own world. And it showed again on Sunday. They were dominant. Aaron Rodgers just I've watched a ton of Packers. My best friend is a Packers fan, and we watched most of the game together. I left when it got ugly. And I've watched so much Packers football that was Aaron Rodgers was running for his life truly, and you don't see that often. And he commended the Jets' entire defense on the Pat McAfee show. He was individually naming players, including Jordan Whitehead, who I think made a really good play against Rodgers in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. But it just goes to show that the Jets are not – we've actually turned the corner finally. And I felt like this was the statement game. And when you do that, you bring the run game, the defense, O-line, D-line domination. This is what you get, 27-10. It was not 27-10. This was a 41-10 game if the first half for the Packers wasn't as dominant on defense as it was. They had Zach a little scared. I was a little nervous, and it was 3-3 at half. Like, that was anybody's game. In the second half, we blew the doors off, and it was kind of game over after the punt block. But this is it. It didn't feel like a Jets win that you couldn't take. Like, there was just so much positive out of this game that you couldn't minimize it, is basically what I'm trying to say. Like, every other win you could try to minimize. Cleveland was a miracle. Miami's third string core, whatever the case. This win, you could not minimize any part of it. Across the board, they dominated. And like you said, the corners, they could bring us to the playoffs. They're goddamn. I want to curse so bad. They're so scary. Sauce is ridiculous. I feel like it's unfortunate because I'm going to, get pushed back because I wanted the offensive tackle and Ike Mekwonu or whoever it was. But you just had to think Sauce was going to have that vulnerable moment at some point, maybe early on in the season. And then, it would come up eventually. Right. No, he was shutting down from snap one. It didn't matter. He could almost do no wrong in this defense. And PFF has that one touchdown allowed on the miscommunication. I will die on the hill that he has 0 touchdowns allowed. But yeah, you said it. They're absolutely dominant, and they deserve all the praise that they're getting after this game. I think the national attention is warranted. We thought it was warranted after the Miami game, and now it's definitely warranted. The Jets are on the map. I think we're the 6th seed in the AFC bracket right now. I'm not going to, get too much into that, but still, this is rare territory for October 20th of any Jets season in recent history. So you got to feel good about it all across the board.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, it's nice to hear that Aaron Rodgers, naming guys out, because they really were that good.
Yes.
And you just, like I said, it's really hard. And we're both doing it. Like, you don't want to get ahead of yourself. But I guess I'm just looking at the way the team is structured and, and thinking, how can this, of course, injuries are the biggest concern at this point.
Yeah.
Because the talent's there. Yep. The talent's there. The depth is there. Eccles came in and played a couple more quality snaps. I know he gave up the TD, but he's done a really nice job. And everything. The thing is, what was I going to say when you were talking about the scores? The thing that because it's happening to me too. I'm sitting there thinking about these wins the other day, and I thought they've been so dominant. No one's talking about how bad Zach has been. Right. Like, he's been bad. I mean, yeah, guys are covered, and I get all that, but he hasn't been good. He's not been terrible, but he's been much less than what we expected. If game 1 you kind of give him a pass, but now you're up to game 3 and you're throwing for 100 yards. Like the running back is rushing for more yards than your quarterback is throwing for. That's not good. But no one's really talking about it because I would guarantee you if they were winning these games like 17-14, like eking out close wins,
yep,
people would be like, hey, man, we got it. What's up with Zach? You can't sustain this. But when you're blowing teams out, people kind of give you a pass. But should they be? Because I'm, you know what I should say? I should say I'm worried about Zach for the first time because after the Cincinnati game, I said that was the first time I was worried about Robert Saleh. And since then, the defense has been lights out.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I'm going to go on record and say this is the first time I'm worried about Zach. I hope you're listening, Zach, and we get the same turnaround that we got from the defense. But no, in all seriousness, I know guys recovered this week. I know that, and I sent out a tweet at last night, I think, and I think some people took it the wrong way. I was kind of thinking about, along these lines and thinking it's nice that the Jets finally have a quarterback where you're not just, you're not turning it over 2, 3, 4 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
Like the defense is playing well and the offense is protecting the ball. And that's why they're producing that's why they're winning, even though Zach isn't producing at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the turnover and touchdown stats in the last few quarterbacks to kind of give an example. Like this is what they were dealing with in the past versus what they have now. And a lot of the replies were like, "So what? Those quarterbacks sucked. The bar needs to be higher." Like I'm not saying the goal is to be better than Geno Smith. Right. I'm pointing out the fact that the current quarterback is doing a much better job of protecting the football. And listen, in these games where the offense isn't where he's throwing for 100 yards, if he's got 2 or 3 picks, you're probably not winning these games. But he needs to take that next step. You can't just hang your hat every week on the fact he didn't have any turnovers. Well, he didn't have any touchdowns either. Like, we gotta you gotta produce. And I think that's the surprising thing. We didn't expect with this many weapons for there to be days where Zach Wilson's gonna go out there and throw for 100 yards.
Right, exactly. And I think it was in our season preview show that I predicted that the Jets were going to run about 2 creative plays per game. And so far, that has been another reason why there's less need to put it all on Zach's back. And I think it's always great in this league when you have a quarterback you can win because of, like the Mahomes and the Allens, the Rodgers, right, the Jacksons. But it's also great when you have a quarterback that you don't have to win in spite of. I feel like if you have 3 turnovers in this game, it's a completely different game because you saw exactly what happened the other way. We had the punt block, so that's 1 turnover. If you add 2 more turnovers to that game, the entire landscape is different because of how close it was in the first half. So, yeah, Zach Wilson did not look good. It was his final stat line, 10 for 18, 110 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. He had quite a few of those heart attack balls that we saw in his first game back against Pittsburgh where he's scrambling around, and the one where he's on the sidelines and just throws it to Corey Davis in the end zone. That was just unnecessary. I don't remember if it was 3rd down or not, but even if it is, it's first down the other way if that's a catch. So It's not what you want, especially in a close game like that. I'm trying to pull up how many turnover worthy plays he had, but I don't think it was as many as it was in Pittsburgh. So it's kind of going down. He has 6 turnover worthy plays in the last 3 games. So he had 4 against Pittsburgh, 0 last week. So he had 2. It's getting better from that standpoint, but from a play-to-play standpoint, it was very scary, and those turnovers could have happened if it was, an inch this way, an inch that way. Jair Alexander absolutely locked down Garrett Wilson, and he was targeted way too many times for being shadowed the entire game. So I thought the game plan was solid, and what they asked of Zach was good, but you want to see more of that limited opportunity. You want to see him go 13, 14 of 18, 150, 160 yards and a touchdown. And I think the narrative is completely different. But yeah, we're bordering on when is the game going to happen where he needs to throw for 270, 280, and 2 or 3 touchdowns because the playmakers aren't doing what they need to do. So it's a bad look. I'm sorry. Go.
Go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
I was just gonna say, so you can bank on the playmakers all you want, but at the end of the day, if they don't show up, Zach has to. And we need to see that game for me to say, okay, yeah, I'm comfortable with Zach, and he's definitely the guy. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a little worried. I'm not going to say I'm off the Zach train by any means, right. And he's looked good, but it's definitely concerning when his limited opportunities aren't great or even above average for the most part.
Well, I think even this one game, if you take one throw, you take that 41-yard completion to Corey Davis. If he leads him on that, that's a touchdown. That's a bomb completed for a 50, 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And everyone's a little bit happier. Like, okay, he's a guy who's going to make a big play. But really, if you look at that play for what it is, he created the time with his legs, which is great. But that was a chance at a big-time score, and he underthrows him, and it's a 41-yard completion, which is, again, that in itself is big, but you kind of left a lot of meat on the bone on that play.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm glad you brought that specific play up, because I was looking at the all 22 and I really thought he had a chance to set his feet and throw it before I think it was a defensive tackle came bearing down on him. I thought he just had that extra second, which would have made it. And yeah, it was a great play regardless, but just that great play becoming a perfect play and perfect execution, that's 6 points. Exactly. So yeah, those little minute things that go a long way when the game is as close as it was in the first half.
And what was it again? Was it against Cincinnati or Miami? I think, against Cincinnati, the ball that we talked about to Breece Hall. Breece Hall on that wheel route all day, wide open down that sideline. He connects, and that's a 91-yard touchdown pass, and everyone is psyched. And
it changes everything.
There's not a defender within 10 yards of him, and he just misfires and overthrows him. And the good thing is he has had his moments, obviously. Sure. And so it's not like you're not looking at a guy who's like never making a play like, we got the wrong guy here. You have a guy who is making big plays at times. You just want to see it more consistently.
Yeah. And so to talk about some of those good plays, obviously the Corey bomb, which the play before was a great slant route to Corey Davis. A lot of people overlook that play because of the deep pass, but the route before it, I believe it was two slants in a flat route. And Corey Davis had outside leverage. He cut inside, and Zach threw it with enough anticipation to get that first down, which then led to the big play. So that was a huge play for him there. And then I also wanted to highlight, there was a play, I believe it was the last pass play of the entire game for the Jets, because they ran the ball the entire fourth quarter. The last pass play, it was like almost like an RPO mesh, more of a play action with Tyler Conklin across the middle again, like they did in Pittsburgh. And I think there was some kind of miscommunication with Alexander and Stokes on the boundary when Wilson went in motion, and Tyler Conklin was wide open, but Zach saw it quick enough and reacted fast enough to both DBs dropping with Wilson to hit that Conklin ball fast enough. And those little things are like, okay, he knows exactly where he's supposed to go. He knows the timing of the play and where he's supposed to put his eyes, which is the first and foremost, the important thing in this offense, especially. Now it's just, let's take a little heat off the ball for one and put the pass where it needs to be, especially on the short and intermediate routes. And I think Zach will do that. And yeah, this week will be a tough challenge, but he has it in him. And we've seen it, especially on film. He's showing it on a more than enough basis for me to say he has what it takes to have those big games if they need him to. We just need to see it. That's all it comes down to, I think.
Yeah. And listen, it's important to keep in mind while we're talking about this. And again, you can't say enough that, neither one of us is saying he's not the guy. There are concerning things, but at the same time, he's played 16 games, as a pro.
Yeah, exactly.
So even I have to remind myself of that, because this, today's game, today's landscape, like fans, we want results right away. Because when you get when you get the Patrick Mahomes or, some of these quarterbacks that come in and have instant success, not everyone's the same. And some guys take a little longer. I joked the other day, and, I've said, I guess the plan with Geno Smith should have been to sit him for 7 years or, 6 years and acquire 3 different Hall of Fame quarterbacks for him to sit behind. And that's all it was going to take for him to become a quality quarterback. 6 years on the bench behind Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And now he looks like he can play. But yeah, no one's giving up on Zach. It's just a matter of, as I said, we didn't expect with the number of quality receivers they have, you didn't expect to see any games where you just couldn't complete a pass. and that's what it felt like. I mean, I had the numbers up earlier. You know, you mentioned earlier 18 completions. How many of those to wide receivers? I mean, most of it. I think he had 5 or 6 completions to his wide receivers, whereas it's a lot of the backs, a couple to the tight ends. But Breece Hall and Michael Carter, they're going to get their 6 or 7 targets a game. So when you're only completing 18, that only leaves 9, 10, 11 balls for your 4 or 5 receivers and your couple tight ends. So not a lot to go around.
4 catches for wide receivers, 4 of the 10. So clearly, even if it was Elijah Moore, it would not have been enough to, satisfy him in the way that I feel like he wants the ball. So yeah, I don't have a problem with the game plan whatsoever. I just think Zach needs to capitalize on those limited opportunities. But
yeah, this is where you have a guy like Corey Davis pulls him aside and says, "Look, man, like,
yes,
a little bit, okay. This is where you need to have these veterans in the locker room.
Yep.
Even Zach, like Zach might be the captain and the quarterback and all that, but he's not a guy who's been there, done that. Like there's not a lot he can tell about Elijah Moore about being in the NFL because they both got in the NFL the same day.
He's been there for 1 round more, yeah.
Yeah, so you hope there's a veteran somewhere, whether it's a Dwayne Brown or a Corey Davis to sit up. But it just, I don't want to keep going back to it, but this is why it's such a bad look for him. None of this should be necessary.
Exactly.
None of it. It's not, even if you fix it, which who knows if they will. People are going to be, anything short of winning a Super Bowl, and fans are always going to be looking at him like, oh, that guy. Like, it's a soft move. It's a bad look.
Yeah. I feel like most of Twitter, at least, is already more than 1 foot out the door with Elijah Moore. So it's tough to get back in the graces of the fan base. And it's just going to be awkward, to say the least, from here on out until there's a solution, or he either is an all-pro or something, like you said, Super Bowl. Exactly. So,
that's the thing. I say Super Bowl, but in all reality, if he's, over the next 2 or 3 games, if he finds the end zone 5 or 6 times, all will be forgiven. If they keep winning and he's producing, fans are gonna move on from it. But they're understandably they're upset right now, and I think for me, part of it is like, there are always going to be challenges and obstacles and adversity. So is every time things don't go well, like, is this going to be a regular thing?
Sure.
Like, oh, I want out. Oh, we lost 3 in a row. I want out. I didn't have enough targets. I want out. I don't know. I know he's a young guy, got to grow up and all that, but it's like I said, and I think that's part, if you're a Jets fan and you've been a Jets fan for 15, 20, 30 years, like, you've seen a lot of guys sit through a lot of bad times and deal with it. And this guy is asking for out just as they're starting to ascend and become relevant again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said it had to have been unprecedented, because after a winning streak like this, nobody should really want out of the team. But the reason he wasn't getting the ball is because the Jets drafted a player at number 36 overall named Breece Hall, who, quite frankly, is an all-pro. Or in the last 3 weeks, since he's gotten a full workload, has looked like an all-pro by all accounts. What did he have? 20 rushes for 116 yards and a touchdown. He had 4 runs of 10-plus yards. His running mate, Michael Carter, also had 6 for 41, including a big 25-yard run in the fourth quarter, which I wrote down immediately on this note card, demoralized the defense.
Yeah.
I think throughout the entire second half, all those runs where Breece Hall was knocking through defenders and getting out of bounds, but still standing up, and the defenders were laying down. That's those type of runs where it's like, shit, I don't think we have a chance right now against this guy. And that's what happened. Breece Hall took over. The creative play that ended up in the touchdown for Breece Hall, the 34-yarder. I read somewhere or heard somewhere on a press conference that was supposed to be a pitch back to Garrett Wilson, who was supposed to either throw the over route to Berrios or the rail route to Michael Carter. They both kind of looked open. I'm not going to say they didn't, but Garrett Wilson wasn't open. So Breece Hall making a veteran move and cuts it upfield in front of all these Packers defenders. Zach Wilson's just standing there like, what the hell happened? He didn't even know, because he wasn't sure what was going on. What do you think of Breece Hall? He's the front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year, deservedly. He's won the Pepsi, I'm not even going to say it, Rookie of the Week 2 out of the last 3 weeks. Should have been the last 3 weeks if not for Sauce. and he also won the FedEx Ground Player of the Week. So what's up with Sauce? Is this or with Brees, excuse me? Is this the new normal, and should we expect this every week from him?
I mean, listen, man, this is what we expected when he was drafted. I've said a few times, easily, and I'm pretty sure I said it wasn't close. Like the most physically talented running back this team has ever had in my lifetime as a Jets fan.
Yeah.
Like you can look at all the backs they've had. They haven't had a lot of great ones, but they've had some good players. Freeman McNeil was sort of at the beginning of my fandom, really good player. Of course, there was Curtis Martin, but they've never had a guy with these tools. And I know those guys don't always pan out. You have to wait and see because we've seen a lot of guys with a lot of tools who aren't in the league anymore. But I just kept saying it. Like there's never been a more talented Jets back in the time I've been watching the team. And I really, from week one, I don't know if they were trying to if it was a respect thing for Michael Carter to let him get a little more, of the action the first few weeks of the year. But like from week one, I'm like, this needs to be the guy. Like he needs to be at minimum 12, 15 carries a game. And just let's see what happens. And now we're seeing him get the ball. And it's fun. And it's, you and I said, I think, what did we say with our projections? Did we say they would? I think I said they would have the offensive or defensive rookie of the year.
We both said the exact same. Yes, they would have one or the other. Now it's almost looking like they'll have both.
I know. Again, it's one of those things. I didn't want to be too bullish.
Right.
And I think the reason, I think it's like if I had to pick one who's going to win it, I would say Brees, because voters love stats.
Of course.
And you can load up on stats at running back. And I feel like you always have an advantage if you're on the D line or a linebacker, because if you get 14 sacks, you're getting the votes.
I was just about to say Devin Lloyd is the front runner for defensive rookie of the year, and he's had a phenomenal rookie season. Don't get me wrong, but it's inflated with the amount of tackles and everything else on a play-to-play basis because he's in the middle of the field versus Sauce's best stat is 17 passer rating against in single coverage. Like that's what he has to hang his hat on and a pick.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, he could at this if he keeps going the way he's going. I don't know how long teams are going to keep challenging him. He'll lead the NFL in passes defended, pass breakups.
Yeah, certainly rookies. Yep.
Yeah, that's just not a stat that people ever look at, really.
Who else are you going to target? I don't know who else you're going to target because DJ Reed is phenomenal.
As I was saying, like I'm saying you're not going to target him, but I think, well, actually, DJ Reed's blanketing guys. And if Sauce is on your best guy, if you're going to throw to someone who's covered, it's going to be your best guy. So Sauce probably will keep seeing targets.
Yeah, and Michael Carter, nothing. We should definitely give Michael Carter his flowers because he has been a great slot player. I think it's underrated, the entire Jets corners. I think they're finally getting their recognition. But yeah, all three of them have been. And Brandon Echols, like you mentioned, in his limited role, that touchdown, there's nothing you can do about it. That was a perfect Rodgers back shoulder, only where my guy's going to get it against Lazard. So there's nothing you can do. And he even said it in the Jets win cam. You could try me once, but you can't try me twice because they tried him again downfield and they had the single high safety come over. It should have been a damn pick, but that's exactly what he learned from his mistake. He got into a better position for the next opportunity and he took advantage. So every single corner is doing so well. I mean, obviously, Jeff Ulbrich needs to get a little bit of credit back from this fan base. I feel like I haven't seen enough of, hey, let's give Ulbrich back some credit. I tweeted that out. But not only that, but every single positional coach, White Cotton on the D-line, Rutenberg on the linebackers, Tony Oden with the DBs, and Marquel Manuel. All four of those guys are doing such a great job with this defense to have them playing at such an elite level. I believe they're like 12th in total defense in their rankings. They're being power ranked in the top 10 by ESPN and NFL Network.
I mean, listen, it's power rankings, right?
Of course, a grain of salt for sure.
But it's still
recognition.
It's kind of, I meant to say that because, I know we joked about like the Pepsi Player of the Week. That's the fans voting. But you're still like, I don't know who's picking the names, but somebody is recognizing you as being worthy. So even if you just want to say that's Jets fan stuff in the ballot box, these guys are still top 4 every week.
You have to qualify.
Yep. Yeah, you gotta be one of the 4 guys they pick who's worthy of winning it. So even if you say the Jets fans are skewing it, this is still every single week they got a guy, sometimes 2, who are worthy of consideration for the best rookie in the league that week. That's phenomenal, man. That's
exactly.
This is wacky.
It's uncharted territory for sure.
I mean, I can get used to this, but it's going to take some getting used to.
You can look at, and I know we never did our quarterly rookie review. We'll do a halfway point review. I promise everybody. Every rookie at this point, except for Jeremy Rucker, who hasn't played a lot, has made a difference in a game at some point or for multiple games, or has just looked better than expected, including Max Mitchell.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson, week 2, Breece Hall, weeks 3 and on, honestly. Max Mitchell obviously looked good. Jeremy Rucker's been inactive. Jermaine Johnson has had his moments. Obviously, now he's banged up. And then even Michael Clemens, the last pick for the Jets, number 117, comes up clutch, a big punt block. And he was pretty dominant on the other special teams. I usually overlook special teams on the All-22, I'll be honest, and I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. But Michael Clemens is quite honestly a dog on special teams. He'll take out the guy next to the snapper and then just bull rush the snapper. And quite honestly, it works because nobody's going to go look him in the eyes on the trenches and say, I have confidence to stop you. Nobody has. And he just 72 stands out on a special teams play, but he's hustling. And I would not want to run into him down the other end of the field after he's made his block, because that's scary too. So every single rookie for this team has made a statement at some point in the season. And that's credit to Joe Douglas. You have all these high picks. Sure, that's great. You can collect them all you want. You're hitting on them now. And I think they're starting to produce, in the second year guys as well, AVT. So it's all around. Everything's looking positive. I'm not trying to get too positive, but you can't look at any aspect of this and try to minimize it in any way. And I think that's the difference in what's going on right now in New York. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and we've said it a few times already, but it is hard not to get carried away at the moment because, but listen, all it'll take is a couple losses in a row and it all comes crashing down, and let's fire everyone all over again, and everyone gets back on that bandwagon. But it's just hard to envision, again with the pieces that are in place. Like I said, we'll talk about the Denver game, but the way Russ Wilson is playing right now, and the way the Jets secondary is playing right now. I like that matchup for the Jets, but it's the thing to me. And I was thinking about doing an entirely separate, either an article or, maybe a post game pod, because it feels like you can do it any week because the Jets rookies are gonna, every week someone's gonna make a play. But I'll touch on it briefly here. I think that, and look, I've been as guilty of this as anybody. I'm not gonna lie. So don't, no one has to say, oh, I've seen you do this, Glenn. I know in years past, part of it is, even if you're not a bad team, but even more so when you're terrible, like the Jets have been for so long, a lot of fans will come draft time will be, you kind of put the blinders on and you just lie to yourself for lack of a better term. You're like, all right, this guy's going to be good. Even though part of you's like, there's not a lot there. You may not truly believe in a guy, but I mean, Jesus Christ, if you can't be optimistic at draft time, just stop watching. Just stop.
Exactly.
That's the only time where you probably, even if you're wrong, you don't know. Well, I know when we played the games that we sucked. So I know we sucked, last year. This coming year will probably suck, but we might not. So let's hang on to the we might not bit so we can have 4 months of not being miserable discussing this football team. So I feel like there's been a lot over the years of convincing ourselves. Again, I'm as guilty of it as anybody. Giving guys too long, guys who, there's the part where you say give a guy 3 years before you judge him, but then he looks so bad after the first year and a half that you're like, this guy's never going to get it. But you don't want to believe it. So he might make one play and you're like, oh, look, there's something. Like Chad Hansen. Oh, he made a diving catch against the Saints, which that was a hell of a catch. We're like, oh, that's his first target in weeks, and maybe he's getting it now. Maybe he'll be good. Yeah. And you have to kind of lie to yourself, because who wants to spend 365 days a year lamenting the fact that the team sucks when the draft gives you that little window to be optimistic and hopeful? But we don't have to do that anymore. They're good. These players are good. We don't have to lie. We can be honest and say these guys are good. There is no pretend. There aren't 6 dudes who can't find their way onto the field where we got to think, oh, well, maybe he'll be good when he does get on the field. Maybe they've benched him for 3 years because it's a really good plan. No, like these guys can play, and it's just fun to watch, and it's as excited as Jets fans have been in a long time, and rightfully so. And now we just wait and see where it goes.
Yeah, back to your draft point. I think you spend 6 months from August to January watching these games, and obviously recent history has just been garbage, and you're so depressed watching the games that you look forward to the draft time because it should be a happy time from January 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever the end of the season is, till draft time. Every team should have optimism because all 32 teams should get better, whether you like to pick on the surface or not. Like the Patriots got pooped on for getting Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton, but they're actually working out. So every team is supposed to get better in draft time. So it should never be a time to be, depressed or anything like that. It's tough. I mean, this week, I don't know about you, but I'm totally down to skip the draft talk. I have some names written down if we don't, but I'm cool with it just because there's no need to at this point, because we should be talking the exact opposite way. Instead of, Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl games, we should be talking about the playoffs. I think that's something, and we'll get into the preview, that if the Jets win this game, this will be 5-2 now. You're 3 games above 500, 2 games before the bye week, a couple AFC East divisional opponents coming up, but this game is winnable. You mentioned it earlier. You like the matchup. I definitely like the matchup for our defense. Scared a little bit for our offense, and I think it could be a lot of the same against what happened with the Packers. It might look a little different. The Broncos are a different team, but they have another lockdown corner. Patrick Surtain is very, very good in his 3rd year now, I think. Him and J.C. Horn, I think, were 2020. So I think 3rd year for Patrick Surtain. Either doesn't matter, 2nd or 3rd. He's locked down. They have Justin Simmons, the safety. Their defensive line is still very good. I know they've lost a lot of pieces, but Bradley Chubb is still there. So I believe he has 6.5 sacks on the year. So he's up there, top 3, top 5 in sacks. So it's definitely another tough matchup, but one that the Jets should win. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Outside of Buffalo, there's no unwinnable games for the Jets. Outside maybe Buffalo, and even so, if we catch Buffalo on a bad day, let's put them through some tables. So what's your matchup to watch, or someone that you think specifically could do well or might not do well in this matchup that you think is worth keeping an eye on against the Broncos?
Well, I mean, excuse me, I hate to say it, but I do think that Zach Wilson is going to have a hard time moving the ball against this defense. They really are just that good. So what does that leave? That leaves the running game again. Now, Breece Hall, this is a strong defensive unit, but are you going to just feed him all day? Excuse me. If in fact Zach Wilson can't get the job done, and I think that's where you're going to have to see them. You're going to have to see Zach. You're going to have to call on him to make a couple of big throws. You can't keep nickel and diming and expecting defenses, if nothing else, to loosen things up a little. Because if I'm the Broncos, and I'm sure this is what they'll do, you're going to come out and say, let's make Zach Wilson beat us, and we're going to load the box to shut Breece Hall down, and we have the horses to do it. And if Zach can't make some throws, then we're going to shut your offense down all day. And this could be sort of a step backward, not in terms of ability, obviously, but we may not see the same production out of Breece Hall this week, unless if we see a repeat of just grind them down and he picks up 70 yards in the fourth quarter. I think that's the more likely scenario, is that this is going to be, I think it's going to be a low scoring game. But I think Breece Hall is going to he's going to get some numbers. I think his yards per carry will be down, which is tough to say because he could always pop one for 70, and that kind of sets you up for the rest of the day. Your yards per carry is going to be solid. But I think Zach Wilson is going to have a hard time moving the football. And I think Breece Hall, he'll get his numbers, but I think a lot of it's going to come late because no matter who wins this game, no one's running away with it. That being said, someone's going to win 42-0 because I said that. But yeah, I think Zach's going to have a hard time, but I do think based on his ability, I think I'm just thinking in terms of Robert Saleh's approach, he's a big kumbaya guy, wants everyone to be happy and positive approach and positive vibes only and all that. My guess is going to be that they try to feed Elijah Moore and get him 8-9 targets.
Yeah.
I think other coaches might say, well, then you can sit today. You can, we don't know what your future is. You're on the bench. If the Jets were to do that, I would be blown away. If Robert Saleh went the route of we're either going to cut your snaps or you may not be active, I think that honestly, if that were to happen, I think that'd be a Joe Douglas thing. But I'm gonna guess that with the two choices, either bench him or overload him. I'm gonna lean more toward overload, and he's got the ability, he's got the talent. He's gonna want to try to quiet some of the hate at the moment, I would imagine. Yeah. And I'm gonna say Elijah Moore has himself a nice day.
Yeah, our viewer Mickey here said Zach is due for a big game, and you were saying all that, and I certainly agree. He is due for a big game. I just don't think that this will be the matchup that we should expect.
Exactly.
260, 70, 280, whatever, plus and multiple scores. I think you can expect big time throws, and that will make it a big game for him because there are certainly matchups that I like. You mentioned Elijah Moore. I'm certainly in that camp. Let's feed this guy, like overfeed him to the point where if it doesn't work, I'm okay with it because you can change on the fly and you have the rest of the game to do it. But in the first 25 plays, target him 5-6 times and just see what he can do because when he has had the ball in his hands, it's definitely a good time for Jets fans for
Absolutely.
sure. And his matchup, I mean, I would assume Pastor Tan might be on Corey Davis. He might be on Elijah Moore. I'm not quite sure. But if it's not Pastor Tan, it's a guy named Damari Mathis out of Pittsburgh. He had 4 or 5 defensive pass interference penalties in the first half alone last week of their Monday night game. So when in doubt, just target Damari Mathis and whoever's, he's on. So there's definitely matchups to like. I think the matchup that I'm most nervous for is on the flip side. Granted, Russell Wilson has not looked great this season. Obviously, I said it last week. Just wait for the Rodgers get back game. He snaps back like a rubber band. It could take one game for him to be back to MVP. Luckily, it wasn't against the Jets. Russell Wilson's kind of that same mold, but not to the same extent. I think Russell can make flashes and have splash plays, but he's not really going to wow me in terms of, 400 yards. We really just lost to Russell Wilson. That being said, Jerry Jeudy in the slot kind of makes me nervous. He's a little bit different than other slot receivers. He's a very good route runner. And I praised Michael Carter II earlier, and I think he's the one that's going to have a big game. I think on the outside, you have Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Reed and Sauce can handle those guys, in my opinion. I think it's going to come down to Jerry Jeudy versus Michael Carter. That's my big matchup to watch. But like you said, this is going to have to be a game where Zach doesn't have to make all the plays, just some of the plays. And if he can make majority of those plays, the Jets have no reason not to win this. I wrote it down. They showed a graphic during the Monday night game. The Broncos have been in a 1-score game, 3 points or less, mind you, in the fourth quarter of every single game this season. When you're going up against a team that leads the NFL in fourth quarter touchdowns, fourth quarter yards per play, everything positive in the fourth quarter against you, that's not a recipe for success. So if the Jets can even hold it close, like you said, no 42-0, no even 26-0 like it was last year, yet keep it close. And the fourth quarter, that's the Jets. And I truly believe that the Jets can come away with a victory here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be I think if the Jets do score a touchdown, it's going to be late. It's going to be when they wear Denver down. I could see this being really boring, sort of 17-9 type of game. Sort of 9-9 going into the fourth quarter or 10-9 going into the fourth quarter. Unless you see a defensive score. If Russ Wilson plays, if he starts, does he finish? And if you go to the backup, and even with Russ, the caveat with this, the caveat with defensive battles and the final scores is always, does the defense get a couple takeaways and run 1 or 2 of them back? That's the only way I can see really significant scoring early on. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be like a 17-10 type game.
Yeah, I'll go out and just give my prediction. I had down 17-14. So I'm in that same boat. I think, like last week, if you can get that special teams or defensive turnover and turn it into points immediately and not rely on your offense, even with a short field, that's going to be the way to score multiple touchdowns in this game. I don't foresee it coming all on offense. They only scored, this is weird to say, 2 offensive touchdowns last week. But they still, in the last 3 weeks, they lead the league in rushing touchdowns with 8. So just keep that same formula. I think 17-14 is well within reach for all the reasons we just laid out. And yeah, I mean, if Brett Rippon is the quarterback, I might be a little, less nervous than Russell Wilson. I think, sure, Brett Rippon killed us or whatever they want to say on Twitter, but it's Russell Wilson at the end of the day, and he could have a good game. That's basically what I'm trying to say, is that he could have a good game. I want the Jets to win. I think the Jets will win, get to 5-2 before these harder divisional matchups that looked a little easier on paper before we got to this point with Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, Bailey Zappi, man. He's
it's nuts.
I hate to say it. I tweeted out before the draft, that I knew the Jets weren't in the market for a quarterback, but he was a lot of fun to watch. Like, could he be like a day 3 backup?
Yep. You mocked him to the Jets at one point, I'm pretty sure.
I think I did. If
they didn't take a first-round quarterback, I said you threw out a scenario of, hey, like, scorched earth. They don't take a quarterback at 2. They go whoever, and they got Bailey Zappi in the 4th. I think you got a lot of hate, and I don't think it was necessarily warranted, because you break all those records in college. You can't be a bad football player.
Yeah, and where do you go? Round 5, I think.
Round 5, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, he was a fun player to watch at Western Kentucky, and yeah, he might be one of the better quarterbacks on the schedule right now, remaining, and that's a good thing though. You look at the QBs they have left versus the QBs they faced, and
4-2 is pretty.
Listen, if they win, if they get to 5-2, then at that point, not making the playoffs becomes a disappointment. Like, you can't be 5-2, playing that well and having that the quarterbacks left on the, I think they have Jared Goff. With this defense, you can't let Jared Goff beat you with these guys you have on defense. So you got some players that you should be able to slow down sort of these middle of the road QBs. 5-2 is a nice little launching pad into the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it weren't for the Elijah Moore trade at the top, I would have led the show with this, but you might not remember, but when I first started doing the podcast here 2 years ago, entering week 7 of the 2020 season, we sat here. We were an audio only podcast, thankfully, because our reactions would have been absolute garbage. We were 0-6, and we were talking about not just the house being on fire, but the ashes of the house being on fire. So it's so nice to close this show thinking about 5-2 and the realistic possibility of it, and just how in such a short time you can really transform a franchise. I think Giants fans are getting a piece of it now at 5-1 with Brian Daboll, and you can say it's unsustainable all you want, but they're wins at the end of the day, and that helps your team grow as a unit. So it's nice to see such a short turnaround. And I don't know if you remember that podcast, but that was grim times, and we're definitely turning a corner onto greener pastures. And it's nice to be talking about wins, because it makes you more excited to come on and do a podcast and write that article about somebody doing good. And now we have the distraction, but when there's positivity in the air, it just makes everything flow so much better.
Dude,
and I'm so happy for it.
I say all the time, and I'm not even joking. And it's kind of it's kind of a sad commentary, but I after the first Cleveland win, I felt it. I feel, because they usually only get a couple wins a year, and I always forget because they're so infrequent. And then when they get a win, I always say the same thing to myself. I'm always like, I can't believe how much this team has control over my happiness. Like, I feel in my own damn life, I feel so much better when they get a win. And that's bad. That shouldn't be the case. Like, my son is just now at the point where he's starting to sit on the couch with me and watch, like, he can watch the first half because he's young enough with the time change. He's got to be in bed at halftime, but he watches the first half with me, and I look at him cheering, and I'm like, am I doing the right thing here? Like, should I send him to his room and tell him to read a book about Albert Einstein or something?
Right.
Because I don't want him going to, I don't want him being getting bummed out when the bad times come. But it's crazy. I sometimes I need to take a step back and be like, dude, like, these guys don't even know you exist on this planet, and here you are, like, mad at the world for a few hours on a Sunday after the game because they lost or whatever. But yeah, you just when you're this much into a team, man, everything, so what is it? The cloud doesn't have as many skies. The sun shines a little brighter. Hey, they won. I'm happy. Like, things don't bother me. But it's crazy. The strangers shouldn't have that much control over me. But damn it, 34 years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is nice on Monday when I go into work and my boss is still, crapping all over the Jets, and I'm like, "Hey, just at this point, just keep talking because
Yeah.
every time you do it, we keep winning, and I'll take it, whatever works." I'm not superstitious. I'm just a little stitious.
I was
So
wondering. I think exactly. I told you about what was it? The after the Dolphins win, when that guy came up to me, after the
yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I've never met the guy in my life. It's my
In his
kid's jujitsu
feelings.
practice, and he's like, "Oh, you only won because you're third stringer." So I was curious what he was going to say since they beat Aaron Rodgers. Like if he
Yeah,
and he just
yeah.
and I just kind of kept an eye out. He just walked past me. Hey, what's up? He fist bumped me and kept walking. He didn't really say anything, and because you figure the Dolphins lost to the Vikes. But
Oof.
like I said, it was a good conversation all around. But I think people are starting to notice. People like
For sure.
we can't really. The Jets might not be a team to make fun of anymore.
Yeah, people tried to minimize that Miami game specifically and say, "Oh, well, whatever, that was your Super Bowl. Your no game is gonna be
Yeah,
better than that game there," and if it wasn't for some really stout first half defense, the game right after would have been a better game by the Jets. So stacking up these wins in a positive manner with a good foundation to build on is what we want. 5-2 is what we want. Maybe we want Brett Rippon. I'm not sure. But for
I'm
now,
telling you, I know we're wrapping up, but the Russell Wilson is so bad right now. He might be the best guy to face. He's so
right,
bad. He's so
he
bad.
is. Those pictures of him over the middle and he can't
Yes.
find the open guy
Every
and
every
they're
week
editing out the defenders and he's still
yes.
it's so funny.
Somebody did it. Somebody did a breakdown of like showing his vision over the
It's
middle.
bad.
He is not. So that's the part where I'm saying Denver might not score
Yep.
because if you lock down the guys on the outside and he's not seeing the middle, he might be the best guy to face right now,
Yep. Shit, if the Jets shut out the Broncos,
or
I
even
I
keep him
might
out of the end zone.
I might I
17
might wear
and
a Halloween costume on Thursday if the Jets shut out the Broncos. Like that's
hold,
that's
hold, hold them to
crazy.
field goals. Hold them to
Yeah,
field goals.
exactly. Yes, exactly. But all right, that's it for us for now. We'll be back next Thursday. Make sure you tune into Glenn's YouTube recap of the game Sunday afternoon or Monday morning. You can follow him on Twitter at AceFan23. You can follow me on Twitter at DTereman. Follow us obviously at JetNation on Twitter, on Facebook, YouTube, all the social platforms. And thank you to everybody in the comments. I see everybody blowing up about Denzel Mims playing and Elijah Moore here or there. Where is he going to be? So I appreciate everybody's interactions. And until next week, 5-2, let's go Jets.